Welcome to the Swim Swam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, and joining us today, she is fresh off a silver medal performance in the 10K open water race at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. Today, we are sitting down with Moesha Johnson. Moesha, thanks so much for being here. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. A bit jet lagged, but still living off that high from last week.
This episode of the Swim Swam podcast is sponsored by Commit Swimming, SwimSwam's exclusive team management software partner. Since 2015, Commit has been providing coaches with swimming's leading workout management software. And now, Commit has team management software too. Commit wants to help you make the switch from Team Unify to a simpler, more powerful solution. Their onboarding and customer service team will walk you through every step of the way. Check them out at commitswimming.com to book your demo today. That's COMMIT swimming.com. Let's start there. Just coming into this Olympic Games, how were you feeling heading into, especially the circumstances surrounding the open water race? You know, it was in the Seine River. We didn't know how clean it was going to be or if it was going to be clean. But just coming into this race, how were you feeling overall?
Yeah, I think for me, I felt very prepared for the open water. We've been looking at it since Doha, trying to push into that medal position, and we've been looking at the river, we've been looking at currents, we've been discussing how we can work with that. So I felt super prepared, and we knew that water quality was going to be something that, added to the mix of things, but that's part of open water, that's part of the sport, how you manage these variables. And we had a practice run last year of, trying to get into race, and it was cancelled. So we'd had that practice of potentially having to wait. We had eventually we had a backup plan, so if it wasn't good enough. So I think, I came into this knowing what I needed to do, what I wanted to get out of it, and I felt really comfortable with the preparation and trusting that the water quality assessments were going to be in our best interests.
That's right, because it wasn't just the water quality. You mentioned the currents. There was really strong currents, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm not super familiar with open water. I'm guessing most open water has some kind of current, but was this one pretty significant? I heard from a couple others that this was like the toughest race that they had ever done.
Yeah, so in terms of current, not every race has a current, especially if you're in a lake, but sometimes oceans will have a current. But this was like a full-on current. I think for the women's race, it was higher than the men's race as well. So I haven't personally done a river swim, and it's not something that's super common in open water, but I would love to see more of it because I think that brings a lot of interesting viewership for our sport as well. But yeah, the current was flowing, I think, at about 0.8 to 1 meter per second, something like that. And a few days before, it was even flowing at 1.2 meters per second. So to give a bit of context, I think I average in a 1500 about 1.5 meters per second. So to get back against like a current that's flowing like that, you're having to hit some pretty high speeds in terms of, for a 10K, like you don't want to be holding that forever. So I think a lot of girls, there's a lot of feedback in my race that they really struggled with it. And I know some of the boys said it as well. But I think for me, like, it was conditions that I'd prepared for so well mentally as well as physically. And I felt super comfortable in those conditions as well. I got in for a test swim the day before. Not many athletes did. I think not even like a third of the girls got in for a swim. So I'm not sure why exactly. Maybe it was water quality. But I got in the day before, really felt it out, figured out what I wanted to do in it, and just familiarized myself with that current, because I think as well, like, we've done a lot of flume work, which is a very similar feeling. So,
a lot of what work?
A flume, like the endless pool.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So not leading into this race specifically, but throughout the season. So it's a very similar kind of feeling of like not really going anywhere whilst you're putting effort in. But I think for me, like something that we really worked on as well before that race was mentally going in and not getting caught up in change of effort, but making it feel like the effort was continuous throughout the entire course. So even though against the current, it visually was different, you wanted to make sure your effort was consistent the whole way, like you're in a lake. But it's something that's quite challenging because one way you're visually seeing how fast you're going, and the other way you're visually seeing how slow you're going. But realistically, you wanted to keep your heart rate pretty consistent. So I think that was something that I think really helped me, especially it kept me calm. And I know a lot of girls were putting in probably a bit more effort because it felt harder. But obviously over a 10K, that all eats into your energy sources.
Yeah, that's great insight. A lot of these things I wouldn't have thought about, especially trying to keep your effort the same, even though you're going at different paces. Because when I talked to Daniel Whiffen yesterday, and who's the Olympic medalist in the 800 free, who did the open water, and he was like, "Yeah, if you're swimming with the current, I did 800 meters in like 4 minutes."
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Current, it was like 15 minutes.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a really significant current, and it was really hard to find anything of similar conditions leading into it, like the last 18 months. There was not really any river swims. I know my squad, while I was back in Australia for pool trials, they had the opportunity to get in their local river and feel it. But yeah, obviously, like I didn't have that opportunity. I didn't have a river, and a lot of athletes probably wouldn't have had a river. So it was really unique, but I think that's what made that race so special as well. Very, very, very unique race.
Yeah. So if you can take me through the race, you're feeling good. It seems like you were very prepared. You even got in the day before. But then how did the actual race go over? It's a 2-hour race. It seems like a lot can happen.
Yeah. So I'm pretty like new to the open water scene in terms of experience. So I only started trying 10Ks after Tokyo 2021 when I missed the pool team. So my first international race was in 2022. So for me, like I've had to play around with a lot of different open water tactics and figure out what's really working. So I think that's like just a little bit of background context. I've tried a lot of things like breaking away and then dying and then, trying to come from behind, but not understanding how to finish well onto the touch pad and a few things. So for me, I dove into that race knowing that I got to be careful because at the end, if I exert too much energy at the front, then I'm going to die. So I dove into that race and I knew like I always like to have a good start, but I also try not to put myself out in the front because, like then I can get a bit excited and lead too much. But I dove in. I actually, I got out really well. And then about halfway down the first straight, I put my head up and I look around. I look to my left and I look to my right, and I'm like, oh no, like I'm out front, like straight away. So I kind of was like, I was frustrated with myself from the start of the race actually. So we hit the bottom turn, and if you watch the replays, like everyone gets swept because the current's so strong. But I did a really good turn, and we had to head to the wall to get back up the river. You had to sit right on the wall to get back against the current. It was where it was weakest. And so I just started working up, but I tried to pull back into the pack. So some of the Italians went up that first straight. So I'm like, okay, we're back in the group. We're good. But at the top of the course, because some of these guys hadn't swum the course, they started going against the current, trying to get back to the timing gate, and we stopped moving. So that's kind of when I took over again, and I had to go the other way around. We had to go right up and cut across to the timing gate. And so from there, I just, after that first lap, I felt quite confident in my preparation, seeing that maybe other people were more uncertain than I was. And so for the next few laps, Sharon Van Ruwendal led the race, and I was in behind her feet. But I think whilst I was behind her feet, I was really like looking at the girls behind me and what was happening. And just because of the course style, there was really significant points on the course where the group would break away. And there was really, you know, there was TVs along the edge of the river as well, so you could really see while you're swimming. You could get really immediate feedback on what was happening in the pack, which is never happens in open water, and it was actually such a useful tool for our race. Um, so I was really just sitting in there trying to feel what was happening, and um, in those few laps, I realized that you had to sit up high in the group because it was single file. We're used to pack swimming, right? But it was such a single file race. You had to position yourself well. So I just made sure I tucked in really tight. But on the third lap, I wanted to push it out a bit more because I was seeing that there was breaks in the group. So I wanted to push it out, try and stretch it out, and bring it down to like just a few of us girls, and then so kind of do a surge and then pull back and then another surge at the end. But on that third and fourth lap, fourth and fifth, I think it was 6 laps, yeah. So after the halfway mark, I pushed on, and the group behind was really having to work to try and keep up with us. And then really, I kind of just kept leading it because I just felt so strong, to be honest. I felt strong. I felt comfortable. I knew Sharon was behind me. And then I could see on that coming into the last lap that we'd broken away. So I knew I was guaranteed a medal, and I knew I wasn't going to die. I felt like, my energy levels were really good. So, coming into that last lap, I wanted to go in leading that last straight because I knew it was hard to pass. And that was going to give me the best opportunity for the best position. And, coming under, we had these big bridges, like this big bridge with like pillars, these thick pillars that really changed the current when you went under them. And that's where Sharon got me. She did a different tactical move. So that's where her experience in open water really got her that gold medal. But I just wanted to position myself so high in that race the whole way. And once we'd broken away, there was no way anyone could catch us. Like, we were too fast. Like, we were able to hold a quick pace because it wasn't a pack swim. You could just, you could just not exert as much energy because you were just dragging 1 or 2 people. So, in my mind, it was quite a simple race compared to some of them.
Really? That's really interesting. I mean, that sounds exceedingly complicated to me, but if it's simple, I mean, I guess that's good.
Yeah, so I think, like, for me, it was simple because I'm a very aerobic trainer and I can sit at quite a high pace quite comfortably. But normally when open water is in a big pack, there's so much more wash factors involved, and there's so much more contact with other girls that really is hard to manage. Where this race, because it stretched out so much, I really felt like you were able to reflect your pure swimming training and your pure preparation. Some people may not agree, but for me, like, I just felt like I was able just to swim and also show that I'd prepared for these conditions really well. So, we'd prepared for this river mentally, physically, like I said, tactically, I'd prepared for it. So I just feel like that race, I was able to show exactly the training I'd put in the last 6 months.
Which is great. I mean, that's what you want, especially in an Olympic race, right? I
mean, exactly.
That's so cool to hear. But wow. So I'm curious, on the last lap, do you finish going with the current or going against the current?
So you finish going into the current. So me and Sharon were kind of like swapping positions under the bridge, which was a really strong current, and she'd practiced with a teammate the day before, I think, which route was quicker where I was practicing by myself. So she'd found a better line against that current, but like, I just tried to sit on her feet as long as I could. And then once, like, she has more speed in that last 100 meters or 50 meters. But coming into that finishing shoot, it just took forever. Like, you see us coming, like, even 5 meters out, you just stop moving. Like, you're just coming in, you're like, oh my gosh, like, we're not getting any closer. So that was, you had to really control, I had to really control my mind at that point. Because it did feel like a long, long way.
I would hate that. That sounds terrible. But I mean, you got there, right?
Yeah.
So that's the race, and I mean, congrats on silver. How did that feel? You know, your first Olympics, you get a
So for
medal.
me, it's my first international individual medal. So I've been part of the Australian relay that's come through the last few years, but my goal has been to get into that individual podium position. And in my mind, I'd thought probably like more Singapore down the track. I didn't know if I'd be able to pull it off this soon. But after Doha, I sat down with my coach and he's like, you really can be aiming for a medal. And I was like, no, not really. Like, I kind of didn't really believe it. But then, coming into April and May, I was like, actually, like, I have that confidence. Like, I think I can do this. So I think it was something like I knew that I could do, but it was something that I'd never, like, finishing in a podium in open water. It's not just how fast you can swim; it's quite experience based as well. Getting to that touch pad in those top three. So yeah, I watched a lot of races as well, just how different people finish, because that's where I feel my weakest is in that finishing shoot, because I can put myself amongst it, but it's so tactical sometimes if you're coming in with a group. How you finish is very critical sometimes. So yeah, like it's crazy. Like, it's sometimes, I have had a few reflections. I'm like, oh, I was so close to gold. Like, I was right there, put myself in that position. But, Sharon's like, she's an unbelievable open water swimmer. Like, she is now officially the greatest of all time, having 3 Olympic medals and 2 of them gold. So to be second to her in my first Olympics, I can't complain about that at all. And like, to have any medal at the Olympics, like I said, I didn't know if that was even going to happen. So um, yeah, I think I don't really have anything to complain about. I committed to my decisions, and it's really hard to come out of an open water race, not going like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. But I came away pretty much going like, I'm happy with every decision I made. Even when she passed me, like, I'm like, well, I wouldn't have made the decision any differently. So that's something that I'm pretty proud to be able to say.
Yeah, once again, just congrats, and like, what a feeling to walk out of as a competitor and as an athlete of, I gave it my all. I'm really happy with how I executed my own race. And, I got on the podium, and there's adjustments to be made, but I'm happy with every decision I made.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, once again, your first Olympics, you competed in the pool as well. Just how was the experience overall for you of being in Paris and being at an Olympic Games? I've never been to one, and I don't want to go to one. Just as a, as media, because it sounds so chaotic and so hectic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, for you as someone who's been to meets like World Championships, how did the Olympics differ, or what was your experience like there?
Yeah, so I think coming into it on the Australian camp, I really felt the tension in everyone, and I really struggled in that preparation, if I'm honest. And then once I got there, I was like, oh, is this the Olympic Village? Like, I wasn't actually that like mind blown, I guess, by it. And I was like, oh, it just feels like world champs again, like. But once you got into that pool, and once it was kind of like race day, and you saw the crowd, heard the crowd, and you saw people's lives changing, the few days of racing before you, then it's like, whoa, like, this is actually something else. This is another level. So like, I think, the pool experience, the open water experience for me was so, so different. I went into, like, say, Australian swimming trials. I'd almost not done it because I was just going to focus on open water at that point. But I decided to do the pool for a number of reasons. One, like, I felt like after I'd missed Tokyo, I was like, no, I think I want to do this and get on the pool team. 2, like, the pool environment is something that's like the pinnacle of like swimming. I think like that crowd was, I think that's a crowd that no Olympics has really had before. Like, it was unbelievable. And I think for me, I also, that pool experience was in preparation for the open water. Like, it's such a high stress environment. Well, for me, I found it really stressful. And coming into open water, then I found it a lot easier to manage because open water is a lot more calm compared to that. So I felt like I'd put myself through the highest of high stress levels. So coming into open water was easier. And then, yeah, coming into the open water, you know, off the back, it's never easy going from pool to open water. Just one, there's such different energy levels, there's such different environments, and just balancing that, you know, is always really tricky. But, you know, when we got to the open water, we had unbelievable crowds, and that's something like hats off to like the Paris Olympics. You know, open water has never had viewership like that. We had crowds up and down the river. We had lineups to get in, and they were cheering for everyone from the first place to the last place, you know. And I think that's what the Olympics was, that whole experience of just like, you're here at the Olympics, like, enjoy it. Even if you're participating, you've made it. You're giving your best, and the crowd's here to support you through that. So that was kind of like my overall rough experience, like a rough outlook of it. But yeah, I think once you finish your competitions, that's when I really realized how big and how chaotic the Olympics is. You know, like, um, the days after and coming home, like the last few days, I'm like, whoa, like everyone was like watching, like everyone's followed my journey. You know, Champions Park was something unbelievable. Like, that was epic. Like once again, hats off to Paris for organizing that. Like, it was such a phenomenal way to celebrate an achievement. But
I feel
yeah,
like every Olympics should have that, right? I
I
mean, like,
I
what a
think
cool
so. I
thing.
think it should be an initiative that's now carried across all of them because, you know, like, we get medals like within 10 minutes of racing a 10K, and you're just like loopy, and you just can't take it in. But then you have you know, you come back the next day and you just get to like, that's like, you really get to solidify what you've done and celebrate with the public. And, you know, the Eiffel Tower in the background, it's like, whoa, like I did this, you know? So for me, it was a really good way to process even what had happened. So yeah, but obviously the first days in the Olympics, like, there was a lot of like media about it. It was absolute chaos. But that's part of the Olympic experience. And I think if you want to go to the Olympics, you have to be prepared to embrace that. Um, and, you know, a lot of people, like, you know, we talk about like slow swimming in the pool and a few things like that. And you look at it, it is a pretty low, high performance environment to be in the Olympic Village. But as the week went on, the racing got faster. And I think that's because we all learned how to deal with the environment as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And this being when it was, right? Like, this was the first Olympics after, you know, a global pandemic. And so I think there was so much tension when everyone was like, oh, this has to happen because this is going to like really bring us back to normalcy. And I feel like those first few days you could kind of see everyone was just like tense, and it was like, we've waited for this for so long. It's kind of been like an 8-year road to get here.
Yeah.
But then once everyone got into the meet, like you said,
Yeah.
it got better and better and better.
So from my understanding, like, you know, I was with some other athletes and coaches who'd been to previous Olympics with crowds, and they said, look, be prepared. Like, the first few days are chaos. But I think a lot of the athletes actually hadn't experienced that because most of them were just Tokyo 2021 Olympians. And, you know, I think even they were shocked at the real size of an Olympics, you know, having the full crowds, having the hustle bustle. And yeah, so I think, you know, we all just took a few days really to figure out how to manage that energy, and especially the Paris crowds were like just phenomenal. And I think, you know, if I'd had the opportunity to do another pool race towards the end of the week, I would have managed it even better. Because just something like, I know in Australia we don't get exposed to like the American trials. They had that wonderful crowd, and we had a pretty big crowd. It was one of our best crowds, but it still was like half the tension, I reckon, of what the Paris crowd was. It was just, yeah, you could hear it in the warm-up pool, like just the roof blowing off. So yeah, it was really phenomenal. I have to say that.
And that's so good to hear, just as a fan, and as someone who went through Tokyo, right? And we had to experience and process that experience of not having any fans. I'm curious about your specific pool swim. You made first Olympics, you got a medal in open water. You made a final in the pool in the 1500 free, and you got to do it with. You got to swim in the final with Katie Ledecky, who made history as tied with Emma McKeon for most medals ever by a female Olympian in swimming. And then also the silver medalist in that race was French. So I'm curious just about your perspective on that race, and speaking of crowds, like what that was like to feel the history and the presence of the crowd in that moment.
Yeah, so I think coming from my heat swim, I actually didn't know if I'd make the final in that time. But what we'd been seeing the days before was it wasn't about time, it was about placing. And I think, even my heat swim being in the same heat as the French swimmer, like the crowd was just going wild in that as well. And so coming into that final, like I knew I wasn't probably really medal contention because I had targeted open water. But that kind of also made me more nervous because I didn't feel like as prepared for like open water. I felt so prepared, but my 1500 felt a little bit off the mark to what I would have felt comfortable being in. But, waiting for the final was so stressful for me personally. Like I'm not good at like that waiting around kind of thing. I don't know why. I'm normally much better, but yeah, I definitely felt the most nervous I'd ever felt until the moment when you walked out on pool deck. Once I walked out, I felt like that was like everything relaxed and you could get into it. You waved, the crowd was wild. And I'm able to take that kind of side of things in. It's the waiting and trying to hold that energy in, but as soon as I walked out, you can kind of release it. So like, there wasn't a lot of Australians over there to watch, obviously, because it's so far away, but the crowd was still noisy for me. Like they were just supporting everyone. And then, obviously the French girl walked out and it just blew the roof off. So if I was nervous, I can't imagine how she was feeling. And then, Katie Ledecky, like to be in any of her races was always such an honor, and that race was such a fast race. It was faster than Tokyo. So we weren't necessarily expecting that. We weren't sure what to expect. But I think that shows, to get a medal, the caliber of talent in those girls and the hard work. 1500 shows pure hard work as well. So fourth place at 15:44, that's a really solid, that's a really fast time, not a solid time. It's a fast time. And that was fourth place. So I know personally for me, like I always love being under 16 minutes. So like I was happy enough with my swims, to do 2 16-minute times back to back going into the 10K gave me a lot of confidence. And also like we never really get to do 1500s like that in Australia, like back to back kind of things. So like I was happy enough with my races, but at the end of the day, like I just was like, well, 10K next. And, I think that medal obviously helped me come to terms a lot more with that. But also, I really just took it in like, wow, like I was in a race with girls who just went so fast. Like those girls were close enough to Katie that she didn't look as ridiculously far ahead as she can look sometimes, like they were only 10 seconds behind, which is, for what I've seen Katie swim, like, it's like she swam a fast time, Katie 15:30. And those girls were within the same like swimming frame as her. So it's unbelievable. I would have liked to see Katie go like under 15:30 for the record books. That's pretty untouchable and it just looks great. But what a phenomenal race by her.
We all would have loved to see that. but no, agreed. I mean, that was a cool heat. It was a cool moment. In terms of your preparation, just coming into this, we had reached out to you prior to this interview because you had moved to Germany, and we asked like, oh, when did that happen? And he said, I went to a training camp there in 2023, and then I just stayed.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, what's up with
I'll talk you through it. Yeah. So after Budapest, I went on a training camp with this German group that I'm with now, because it was my first time going to Europe. I wanted to experience Europe a bit more, but I also wanted to, get in with some other training groups and just get my exposure to swimming a bit bigger, and just different styles of swimming I wanted to experience more. And then I wanted to also do a World Cup off the back of that. So like do World Champs, do a training block, a World Cup, and then come home. Because like I said, I was new to open water, so I was trying to get my experience up.
Yeah. And this was after World
2022.
Champs 2022.
Yeah. And so I did that, came home, and yeah, I kind of went through a little bit of burnout at that point, and trained, then kind of got my feet back under me, trained through Christmas, New Year's into the Australian open water. And I just wasn't, I think at that point I was like, I think I want to give the open water a better chance than what I'm giving it now. And I didn't necessarily feel like my training was going to match what I needed to do. It was good, but it wasn't getting that depth of volume, that depth of endurance that I knew most of the European girls were giving themselves. So yeah, I organized with my home coach to go on a training camp. And he knew that I was kind of struggling a little bit with the programming. And so when I went over there, he said, look, I think go over, if you want to stay on a little bit longer, like talk to Bernd about it and see what happens. And so I went over there and I just started training, and then yeah, I just didn't leave. I don't know what Bernd's view of this is. We've actually never really spoke about it, but in my head I was permanent. I think he didn't realize I was permanent until maybe 3 months later. I just kept extending my stay, but like the actual conversation took place closer to Fukuoka. So going into Fukuoka, like I was training well, but like I hadn't like really solidified myself in like a home base. So I think, last year, that training camp into becoming a permanent athlete there, was really just setting myself up for this season. Like the results weren't quite there, but I gave myself that background work, and I got myself ready for this season so I could hit the ground running when I started. And yeah, so I just come back for Australian trials in the pool and the open water, and then I've been over there every other training week. So this is my first time being home. Yeah,
that's crazy.
It is a bit crazy. Yeah, I'll admit it now. But yeah, it's worked out fantastic, and I love training with that group. I love the staff that I'm working with, and I'm just so happy with the whole situation.
Which, yeah, not to say it sounds like it was great for your training and the right thing to do, absolutely, for your swimming career. But what did you have like a life in Australia?
I did. I did. I had a life that I left behind, but at the same time, like it was just not Groundhog Day, but like I've grown up here and I've done all my schooling here, and there was a point where I was a little bit bored, and I was like, well, like I can keep swimming, but I don't know if I'm going to reach what I want to reach in this, in this necessarily training program. Like, I'd hit 15:55 in that, and I was like, well, I don't know if it's going to get much faster on that. So that was a little element to it, but also like I think if I wanted to reach that next level, there was a lot of distractions in the lifestyle that I was living. We've got a fantastic social life. We've got a fantastic, we have the beaches everywhere. We've got the mountains, and like my parents live on property, so I've grown up with horses and all sorts of things. So there is a lot of distraction as well here. So I think, I left a lot behind, but at the same time, I've grown so much as a person being put through the challenges of living overseas, and I've become very professional. I think, I was professional before, but I've reached that next level of professionalism. And also just cultural. I just love the challenge of a different culture. Daily you have to face the grocery store, which, it's just, I'm not just walking into my normal grocery store. It's like still like those little challenges. So it keeps my brain very occupied.
That's an underrated challenge.
It is. It actually is. Yeah.
Especially as a professional athlete. I'm like making jokes, but that's part
of
your
yeah. I definitely, there's times where I don't want to face it and I do like a little online order, but I think, it's just like to the team over there, like they have helped me develop as a person so much more. Like I'm so like, I think I'm a lot calmer. I don't have as much FOMO, all that kind of stuff. And my life here in Australia is not going away. So it's, it's every time I come home, like it's very much the same, which is a beautiful thing, which makes me also feel super comfortable being overseas for this period of time.
That's really great. And so cool that you have the opportunity, right, to get to do something like that. What is the training group like that you're with, and where is it?
Yeah, so I'm in a group, it's out of Magdeburg, so it's about an hour and a half from Berlin, German driving style. So I think, from my perspective, there's a lot of different point of views of like people internationally training with international groups at the moment. And I think, we're all athletes trying to reach the highest level, and we're trying to, like, I think as high performance squads, we should just be trying to create like elite athletes and see what we can do as a, human race when we're at this top level anyway. And so, like I'm in a group, and actually Sharon Van Rundel was in my group at the time as well. When I first went over there, Roman Chuck was in it as well. So it was a very, very diverse group. Yeah. And I didn't necessarily know that I didn't know they were there until I actually visited. So, it's so different to Australia, but at the end of the day, it's just swimming as well. But I think, it's a very, very professional group. It's very self-driven, where in Australia, every day you're hyped up into the training, but it's quite, quite serious in a way, but like you lead yourself in that space. You have to lead yourself through that program, and unless you want it, then you're not gonna succeed. And I think that shows that everyone in that program who has succeeded is very self-driven, and they're professional in whatever they're doing, because just the way the program's structured is, you have to do it for yourself. They're not going to sit there watching over you and pushing you every single lap. It's a very high profile squad now, and like we were talking about it, and if you take out like relay medals at the Olympics and just look at individuals, like Burns probably up there with Boxall or above. He's got 5 individual Olympic medals in swimming. So wow. I don't understand Bob Bowman's group, so don't know how to compare. I don't know how to compare to his group and exactly who's in it. But right. I know from like Dean Boxall, because I like obviously know Dean being an Australian. He's got a lot of relay medals, but if you look at individually, I think he's got 3 individual athletes, but like 5 or 6 individual medals across those athletes. So, my group is right up there. Wow. It's very impressive.
No kidding. Who were your primary, I guess, training partners this past year?
Yeah, so I've trained, in terms of the female athletes, I've trained with Sharon Van Rooyendaal, Isabel Goes, Leonie Martins, and then there's a few other athletes that like at European championships. So Isabel's pool and Sharon's open water, so I'd switch between the 2 programs a fair bit. And obviously in the men's, we've got Oliver Clement, Florian Wellbrook, and Lucas Martins. So it's a very high profile group, and I think, we talk about these other big squads, but I think this squad and what Burns doing needs, like, it should be like acknowledged. Like, it's a very, very good group.
That's yeah, that's amazing. I I feel like we just don't know this because
Yeah,
we
yeah.
feel like
I
we'd
think he's
be
a quiet achiever, but yeah,
yeah
honestly, like, and he's had athletes in the past like Sarah Kohler, now Sarah Walbrock, and
yeah
Franzi, a butterflyer, and some other very successful athletes. And yeah, like I said, 5 individual medals, and Germany doesn't have access necessarily to a relay medal potential yet.
yeah
So yeah, I think what our squad's been doing, and seeing them all work as well, like they're hard workers. It's not like, yes, there's talent, but there's also a lot of hard work being put in.
yeah. I'm well for the events that you swim. That's like you gotta right. Not
Yeah,
that
100%.
sprinters don't work hard, but
Yeah,
it's different.
you got to be willing to, like, even if you've got talent, you got to be willing to put in the time and put in the effort in distance swimming. Yeah. So when you see success in distance swimming, you got to acknowledge that no, that was hard work involved.
Yeah, no kidding. But man, what a group! It
Yeah.
sounds like a good time. Like you said, it's cool that there's a pro group that is accessible, that athletes with that like mindset can gather and make each other better,
Yeah,
right?
100%. So like for me, like when I came over, like I was doing so much training alone in Australia, and I moved over there, and like I'm not even the one doing the most work because I simply can't handle it sometimes. So, I think for me, like being around athletes who are like, doing what I was doing and more, like I was called crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing so much? I think for me, like that's why I've embraced the program so much, and they've embraced me because they see that I'm willing to work hard and commit myself as well. And we all push each other, and I've swum alongside Isabel Goose the last months, and she pushes me, yes, but I'm also there pushing her up and up. And it's one of those things we're all there just working hard, helping each other. And yeah, it's been pretty cool to be part of, and I'm super grateful that they accepted me.
No kidding. I mean, yeah, it seems like overall you had a pretty successful Olympics. Isabel got a medal, you got a medal, Sharon got a medal. It
Yeah.
might be
So yeah, so it was
Lucas got a medal.
Isa got a medal in the 1500. Lucas Martin's Olympic champion 400,
Yeah.
and also Olympic finals. In the 200 free, 200 back.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sharon. Obviously, me and Sharon locked out the top 2 positions in the open water. And then you had Ollie Clement in the men's 10K as well. So yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And Florian, like, I know Florian probably had a lot of expectations on him to perform to a different standard, but I think, he got 8th in the open water, and that's still something that's, amongst those boys is something to be recognized as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's especially, I'm looking at the results right now. It's like all within a minute of each other. I mean, that's a tight field from first to ninth.
Especially in that kind of conditions. It wasn't a pack swim finish. It was, like I said, it was single file. So I think, as a swimming society, like we should still really recognize those top finishes in open water. Yeah.
There a few people have lobbied for wooden medals for 4th through 8th. I'm curious what you think of this idea.
Like, I think though what we need to realize, we actually get a certificate for being like in a final in the pool. And I think it might be the same in open water. You might get a certificate for being a top 8 or top 10 finisher. So I don't know if people know that, but like it's the same at World Champs, and it's a little certificate I will be framing, and maybe you want a medal. I'm not sure, but I think it's something I know as an Australian watching like the American trials and American NCAAs, like there's a lot of recognition for not just the top 3 finishers, but the ones around them. And I think, whether people take it on or not, I think, what America's doing in recognizing talent, not just the podium, is really good. And yeah, maybe we need to recognize a little bit more like the success of an Olympic final, the success of a top 10 finish in open water. Because, yeah, like especially in open water, there's so many variables between race to race that a top 10 finish is still fantastic. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't, and I guess this is the same in all athletics, but specifically in open water, it would really frighten me to get to race day and have so many variables that could go wrong, right? I mean, like once you get to the pool, there's not much that will likely go wrong. Like nothing's going to change. You can control a lot of the variables. In open water, there is so much out of your control.
Yeah, 100%. So pool, like once you get behind the block, it's very predictable. Like what you've done in training usually converts over to what you've done in racing. Maybe not immediately, but eventually your training will come over into a race. But open water, like you can be the fastest pool time trialer in 10K and you can be coming 30th.
Right.
I've been there. I've got some very quick aerobic pool times and I've just been blown out of the water in open water. So, yeah, I think that's developed me a lot as an athlete. You have to go into open water races very, very different to a pool race because it's a decision-making race. And you can plan for X, Y, and Z, and there's so many different outcomes. So, yeah, you have to just be like, it can be more stressful because it's out of your control, but basically open water, you just have to go in going, well, I know what I can do. And I just have to be ready to make decisions, like, you know, have to be concentrating. And then you just have to believe you're fit enough that no matter what's happening, that you can adjust to that.
To loop back around, to use an open water term.
Yeah.
Did you get sick from the river?
No. So just to cover this a little bit with a little bit more detail is so my Olympic committee, our doctors were great and they provided us with great medical care. But in the end, the race day for women's and men's was actually the best quality the water had been in months. We had some really fine days leading into it. And the water quality was to Australian standards on my race day, so it was even better for men's. So a race is cancelled when the E. coli numbers are over 1,000, and the E. coli numbers were under 300. So the levels were very, very safe, and it's something that I think we almost need to advertise more because a lot of people were worried, and we have the system in place measuring water quality to ensure athletes are safe, so they wouldn't put us in if it was unsafe. I'm sure we've raced in worse quality water before, to be honest.
Interesting. Yeah, I had not heard that in any previous conversations. I just heard about people getting sick or puking.
Yeah, so there was some illness. I know that there was some people advertising illness after the race, but I spoke to my medical team and they said, like, we even had a rower with E. coli, so they think it was going around in the village. Because specifically E. coli takes like over 2 to 3 days to develop as symptoms. So it's very likely that that was more from the village life because there was a lot of illness going around in the village. Triathlon potentially had a lot more, maybe had symptoms from it because their water quality was a little bit up and down, but because the river flows so quick, it cleans out really quick as well. So we had at least, I reckon, 3 or 4 clear days beforehand. So like it was just the levels were really good for us. And that data is all available on World Aquatics website if people are interested.
That's great to know. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Moesha.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, we reported on a lot of sickness in the village, right? I mean, I feel like this was the COVID Olympics, not the last one. Just because of the COVID.
So there was all illnesses, like any village situation like that, any big common dining hall, there's always going to be illnesses. And I think most of our team came home sick, to be honest. But you look at every World Championships, there's always illness going around. So it's just a matter of, you know, being proactive in the village and staying healthy. And we were lucky enough in the AOC Olympic building, we actually could have some of our meals just within our team. So we were provided breakfast and lunch. So it reduced the amount of contact time and exposure to dining hall illnesses. So, yeah.
Shout out to Swimming Australia. That's really nice.
Yeah. It was fantastic. But we don't have a party house, so some people would rather a party house than being fed.
Yeah, you have decisions and you can go one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
So outside of the water, you told me that your name, Moesha, was going viral on TikTok.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that it was going viral until someone sent me some memes the other day. So obviously my name is quite unique. Well, I haven't met another Moesha in person, but in America, most Moeshas are like African American from a TV show in 1996 called Moesha. So there's been like a lot of memes around me being a white Moesha, and that's kind of blown up a lot. And then even like some famous writers have been tagging me in videos going, we need to like help us find Moesha. We want to do a story. It's such a cool name. So there's been a lot of different memes about, how do you say Moesha in an Australian accent and a few things like that. So it's been pretty crazy to see that side of things. But yeah, the cool thing is, even though like it is a very American name at the moment, its actually origins are very different. It's the girl name for Moses. My parents didn't know this when they named me this, and it means drawn from the water. So in the end, I identify with it very much.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. It's perfect.
Yeah, I've grown into my name accidentally. They didn't realize it matched me so well.
Do you go by Mo?
Yeah, so I go by Mo. Like 99% of the population calls me Mo. And I always spell it with an E, M-O-E. And yeah, most people don't even know my real name straight away. So yeah.
That's pretty funny. Wow. I've learned so much in this conversation. Thank you for this enlightening talk, Moesha.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. Any parting thoughts or any planned activities for your time home?
Yeah, so for me, I'm still trying to recover. I think I've developed insomnia the last week. So I'm just trying to get back into sleeping rhythm, relax, spend time with family, and then I'll be planning out my next 6 months to my next year. But yeah, otherwise, I think people should get around open water. I think, the education around how the race works is a big part of understanding and helping viewership. But once you start watching and understanding, it's actually such an interesting sport. And yeah, I just want people to see it grow. And I think, having some of the pool guys come across for Olympics was really cool and brought that extra dynamic. And yeah, if there's anyone out there interested in it, well, do some research, have a go, or get into watching it.
You've been listening to the Swim Swam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take Swim Swam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.